When your child gets married, people tell you to let go. What they don't tell you is how it feels when the person they choose looks at you like you're a problem to be managed, not a mother to be loved. The first time I met Emily, she didn't even look me in the eye. My son, Mark, had been talking about her for months. Beautiful, smart, ambitious, different from anyone I've ever met, Mom. He kept saying that dreamy faraway look in his eyes. I'd smiled and nodded and told myself I was happy for him. He was 32, successful in his career, living in the city. It was time. But when they walked through my front door that Sunday afternoon, something inside me tightened. Mark came in first, carrying flowers and a bottle of wine. He hugged me, kissed my cheek, and then stepped aside with a proud grin. Mom, this is Emily. She stepped in behind him, slim and polished, in a cream blouse and dark jeans that probably cost more than my entire outfit. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek, low bun. Her makeup flawless in that I woke up like this kind of way. She was beautiful, no doubt about that. But it wasn't her looks that made my stomach twist. It was her eyes. Cold. Assessing. Like she had already formed an opinion of me before I even opened my mouth. Hi, Mrs. Collins, she said, her tone polite but stiff. It's nice to finally meet you. Please, I said with a warm smile, stepping forward to hug her. Call me Karen. She hesitated a split second too long before letting me pull her into a brief, stiff embrace. She smelled like expensive perfume and distance. We moved into the kitchen where lunch was already prepared. Roast chicken, potatoes, green beans, and my homemade apple pie. Mark sat at the table, chatting excitedly, trying to keep the conversation flowing. But every time I asked Emily a question, she answered in short, clipped sentences, as if this was an interview she hadn't wanted to attend. What do you do for work, Emily? I asked gently. I'm in corporate strategy. She replied, taking a sip of water without looking at me. Consulting. Oh, that sounds very important. I said, do you like it? That's demanding, she said simply. But good for my goals. What kind of goals? I asked, honestly curious. That was when she finally looked at me properly. Her lips curved into a tight little smile. Long term. She said, the kind that don't really involve suburban potlucks or backyard barbecues. Mark laughed, dismissing the sting in her words. Emily's not really a small town type. Mom. I smiled tightly and folded my hands in my lap. Message received. I was small. My life was small. And in her world, I didn't fit. I tried to brush it off as nerves. Maybe she was just uncomfortable. Maybe she'd warm up with time. But the weeks turned into months, and the wall between us didn't soften. It hardened. She never called me. If I texted Mark, she answered through him. Emily says we're busy that weekend. Mom, Emily's not really into family dinners. Emily already has plans. When they got engaged, Mark called me first. His voice was so full of joy that my heart ached with love and fear all at once. She said, yes, Mom! He'd shouted over the phone, we're getting married! I cried, of course. I congratulated him. I told him how happy I was. But when he added, almost as an afterthought, we're thinking of keeping the wedding small, mostly her friends, her colleagues, nothing big, something cracked inside me. Will I be there? I asked, half joking, half terrified. He laughed like I was being ridiculous. Of course, Mom. Don't be silly. Of course. Except, of course, with Emily never meant what it should the months leading up to the wedding. were a masterclass in exclusion. Everything revolved around her world, her venue, her colors, her family, her preferences. Her mother practically lived at the wedding planner's office. I was invited to one dress fitting, and even then, I got the distinct feeling I was there as an obligation, not a joy. At one point, as Emily stood on a low platform in a shimmering ivory gown, I made the mistake of whispering, "You look beautiful, sweetheart." She met my eyes in the mirror and gave a small, tight smile. "Thanks," she said. "We're going for minimal drama, minimal mess. Clean, simple." I couldn't help myself. "Weddings do come with some mess," I said softly. "But that's what makes them real. Family, laughter, a bit of chaos." Emily's eyes flickered to mine again, this time sharper. "We'll manage," she said coldly. "We don't need chaos. Not chaos. Not family. Not me." The night before the wedding, Mark stopped by my house alone. He looked tired but happy, nervously excited. "Big day, tomorrow," I said, placing a cup of coffee in front of him at the kitchen table. "Yeah," he breathed, staring into the mug. "It's all a bit overwhelming." I hesitated. "Are you happy, Mark?" He looked up, surprised. "Of course I am." "Why would you ask that?" I forced a smile. "Just a mother's nerves. She seems strong." He chuckled. "That's one word for it. Emily knows what she wants." I sipped my coffee to keep from saying what I was thinking. She knows what she wants, and what she doesn't want is me. They bought the house 6 months after the wedding. It wasn't far from me physically, maybe 20 minutes by car, but emotionally, it might as well have been across the ocean. A big gray 2-story place with immaculate lawn, black shutters, and a white door. Very magazine perfect. Very Emily. When Mark invited me to see it for the first time, my heart fluttered with hope. Maybe this is the bridge, I thought. Maybe this will be the moment we finally act like a normal family. I baked a lemon loaf, wrapped it in a dish towel, and drove over, rehearsing compliments in my head. Tell her the kitchen is beautiful. Tell her the colors are modern. Don't comment on anything she might take as criticism. When I pulled up to the house, I saw Mark's car in the driveway. The curtains were open. I could see a glimpse of a pristine living room inside, light furniture, minimal decoration, everything in shades of white, gray, and chrome, no warmth. But very clean. I rang the doorbell. Mark opened the door with a grin. "Mom!" "Hey, come in." I stepped into the foyer, my eyes scanning the place. It was impressive. I couldn't deny that. High ceilings, wide staircase. Everything smelled like fresh paint and money. Wow. I breathed. "This is beautiful, Mark." Emily picked everything, he said proudly. Of course she did. She appeared at the top of the stairs a moment later, her expression already tight when she saw me. "Hi, Mrs. Collins," she said. "Karen," I reminded gently. She didn't correct herself. I held out the lemon loaf. "I brought this as a little housewarming gift. It's not much but." She didn't take it. Mark stepped in quickly. "Thanks, Mom. That looks great. I've been craving your lemon loaf." He took it from my hands and carried it into the kitchen. I followed, trying to ignore the wall of tension. The house was beautiful, sterile, almost too perfect. No clutter, no photos on the walls. Yet, no sign that anyone really lived there. It looked like a showroom. Emily gave me a tour, but it felt more like a presentation. "This is the office. That'll be the guest room. This is the laundry. Don't worry, we've got plenty of storage." When we reached the door leading to the basement, she paused. "We haven't really done anything down there." She said, her hand on the knob. Just storage. Nothing interesting. She moved on quickly, opening the next door instead, leading to the garage. Something about the way she skipped the basement made my skin prickle. I wouldn't think about that basement again for months. Not until the night everything changed. The night my son called me, voice shaking, and said, "Mom, you need to come over. You were right about Emily. You won't believe what we just found in the basement." If there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that when someone doesn't want you to look somewhere, there's a reason. But back then, when Emily brushed past the basement door like it didn't matter, I convinced myself I was imagining things. I wanted peace. I wanted to love my son's wife. I wanted a family, not suspicion. So I buried the uneasy feeling deep inside me. For months, life went on, at least on the surface. Mark and Emily settled into married life. They sent Christmas cards, posted pictures online of smiling date nights and fancy brunches. Everything looked perfect if you weren't close enough to see the cracks. I saw them. Not because I was looking for flaws, but because Mark's voice changed, little by little. When he called me, he sounded tired, drained, like someone constantly trying to keep his balance on shifting ground. "She's just stressed from work," he'd say. "She's just particular about how things are done," but specifics. He never gave those, and I didn't push. I didn't want to be the overbearing mother-in-law, the stereotype, the problem. But Emily, she made sure I felt like one anyway. The distance grew. Mark stopped visiting. Texts took longer to answer. Phone calls were rushed. Whenever I asked to see them, Emily had a reason why. It wasn't a good time. She's reorganizing the house. She's exhausted from work. She wants privacy this weekend. She's not feeling well. Excuse after excuse. One Sunday morning, I decided to stop waiting for an invitation. I baked a peach cobbler, a favorite of Mark's since childhood, and drove to their house. I told myself it was just a surprise visit from a loving mom. But if I'm honest, I think I needed proof that everything was fine. When I reached their house, I noticed something strange right away. The blinds were closed. The car was in the driveway, yet the house felt dark. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I knocked. Still nothing. After several more knocks, I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, dragging. The door opened just a crack, and Emily stood there. Her hair was unbrushed. Her eyes were red, her skin pale. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Oh," she said softly, almost startled. "It's you?" I forced a smile. "I brought cobbler. I thought I'd stop by and..." "This isn't a good time," she said quickly, pushing the door tighter. "We're busy." I blinked. "With what?" "Is Mark here?" "His resting," she muttered. It's not a good time." Behind her, I could hear something. A thump, a shuffle. It was faint, but it stopped abruptly when I tried to listen. "Emily," I said gently, "is everything all right?" Her eyes flickered. Fear, guilt, annoyance. I couldn't tell. Then she forced a brittle smile. "Everything's fine." "Really? Please go home." And with that, she closed the door in my face. No goodbye, no thank you, no warmth. Just a cold, definitive shut. I stood there on their porch, holding that warm cobbler like it was the only piece of love I was allowed to give. Something was wrong in that house. I could feel it like a weight pressing on my chest. But Mark never said a word. He called me the next day, his voice thin. "Hey, Mom." Emily said, "You dropped by?" "She didn't let me in?" I said softly. I was worried. "She wasn't feeling well," he said quickly. Too quickly. Mark, I whispered, are you all right? Silence. A long, aching silence. Then, I'm fine, Mom. I have to go. He hung up. My hands trembled as I lowered the phone. Whatever was happening in that house, Mark wasn't allowed to talk about it. Weeks passed, then months. Emily's behavior toward me grew icier. At family gatherings, she'd barely speak to me. If I offered help, she'd take it as criticism. If I complimented anything, she'd twist it into an insult. Everything I did was too much, too little, or not the right way. Still, I told myself, let her be. She'll come around. But she didn't. She got worse. And the worst part was seeing the light dim in my son's eyes. He was quieter, thinner, distracted, always looking over his shoulder. One night, he came to my house alone. He looked exhausted. His hands shook when he held the mug of tea I gave him. Mom, he said softly, can I ask you something? Anything? I whispered. Is it normal for someone to check your phone? All the time. My stomach twisted. No, I said gently. That's controlling. He nodded, staring into his mug. What about? Keeping the house locked. Even inside, like locking interior doors. Why would she do that? I asked. He swallowed. She says privacy is important, but sometimes I feel like she's hiding something. I leaned forward, trying to keep my voice steady. Mark, you can tell me anything. He shook his head. I can't. It'll make things worse. For you. I asked softly. He didn't answer. Instead, he stood suddenly and said, I need to go. She'll be wondering where I am. Mark. Please, Mom, he whispered. Don't make this harder. He walked out the door, leaving his tea untouched. I stood there alone in my kitchen, heart pounding. Something was happening to him. Something he couldn't say. Something Emily didn't want him to say. And something told me the answer was behind that basement door she refused to open. The call came 3 months later. I was folding laundry when the phone rang. When I saw Mark's name, I smiled automatically. Hi, sweetheart, Mom, his voice. It wasn't tired. It wasn't sad. It was terrified. You need to come over, he whispered. Right now? Mark, what? Just come. His voice cracked. And Mom, please hurry. My heart dropped into my stomach. I grabbed my keys, ran to the car, and drove faster than I ever had in my life. When I arrived, Mark was standing in the driveway, pale as a ghost. He looked like a man who'd seen something he could never unsee. Mark, I gasped, running to him. What happened? Where's Emily? He swallowed hard. She's gone, he whispered. She left the house. Fear rippled through me. Why? What happened? He looked at the house, at the basement window in particular, then back at me. We opened the basement, Mom. My breath caught. My God. Mark, what's down there? He closed his eyes. Something she's been hiding from both of us. He shook his head, voice cracking. Mom, it's bad. Really bad. He looked at me, tears in his eyes. You were right about her from the beginning. When Mark led me toward the house, his hands were shaking so badly I had to steady him with my own. He wasn't just scared. He was shattered. Whatever he saw down there hadn't only frightened him, it had broken something inside him. Mark, I whispered as we stepped inside, tell me what happened. He didn't answer. Instead, he locked the door behind us, slid the deadbolt, then checked it again, like someone might try to get inside. My heart pounded. The house was strangely silent. Too silent. Lights off. Curtains drawn. Air heavy and stale. I followed him through the hallway until we reached the kitchen. That's when I saw it. The door to the basement standing wide open. Cold air drifted up from the stairs, carrying a faint smell I couldn't place at first. Dampness, metal, dust, and something else. Something that made the hairs on my arms stand up. Did she do something to you? I asked softly. No, he said quickly. Not to me. His voice shook. But she's been doing something down there. For months. He swallowed hard. I didn't know. I didn't want to know. But today I had to. Why today? He hesitated, then whispered, because she finally slipped up. He motioned for me to follow him down the stairs. Every step creaked. Every breath felt too loud. The further we descended, the colder it felt, like the air itself didn't want us there. At the bottom of the stairs, Mark flicked on a light. The bulb buzzed weakly, illuminating the basement with a pale, sickly glow. And I stopped breathing. The basement wasn't a basement anymore. It looked like a room built in secret. There was a carpet, beige, clean, new. A table with stacks of organized papers. A lamp, a rug, a small shelf with binders. And against the far wall, a whiteboard covered in photos. Dozens of them. Pictures printed on glossy paper. Some taped neatly, some pinned. Some circled in red marker, photos of Mark, photos of me, photos of our house, my backyard, my car, my workplace. Oh my God. I whispered, stumbling backward. What is this? Mark ran a hand through his hair, pacing. She's been tracking us. My entire body went cold. She took these. He continued, pointing to the images. She printed them. She wrote notes. She analyzed us. I stepped closer, trembling. Under one of the photos of my house were scribbled words in Emily's neat handwriting. Pattern, visits too often. Boundary violation. She knows too much about Mark. Need distance. Remove influence before it escalates. Remove influence. Remove me. My throat closed. Mark, why would she do this? He shook his head helplessly. She told me she was journaling. I believed her. I didn't know she meant THIS. I scanned the board, my eyes landing on something that made my heart jump. A timeline. A detailed sequence of events. Visits, holidays, calls, gifts, all tracked like data points. She was analyzing me. I whispered. She was analyzing BOTH of us, Mark said, and she was using it to control my behavior. There was another section on the board labeled Adraidi, ZOE Manani, PULATION, RESC. Under it were bullet points. Karen encourages independent thinking in Mark. Karen asks too many questions. Karen influences emotions. Karen sees too much. The last one was underlined. She sees too much. I felt the room tilt. Mark, I whispered, this isn't normal. This is obsession. I know, he murmured. And there's more. He walked to the far side of the basement and opened a small utility closet door. I stepped closer. Inside the closet was a table covered in neatly stacked files, medical files, legal documents, notebooks, and my breath caught. A manila folder labeled CONTRL methods. I reached for it with trembling hands, but Mark grabbed my wrist. Mom, you don't want to look. But I did. I opened the folder. Inside were handwritten lists, strategies, techniques, manipulation tactics, ways to isolate someone from their family, notes about controlling communication, sleep, decisions. Next to one bullet point, she wrote, Mark falls for guilt easily. Use it. Below that, his mother is his weakness. Remove her first. I couldn't breathe. Mark, she was studying you like a project. He nodded. But when he spoke next, his voice was quieter. Darker? That's not all. He walked to the last table against the wall and picked up a sealed envelope. My name was written on the front. I froze. She never meant to give this to you, he said. I found it taped under the table, hidden. I stared at my own name written in her handwriting. Open it, Mark whispered. My hands shook violently as I tore the seal. Inside was a letter written in Emily's neat, perfect penmanship. I began reading, and with each line, my skin crawled. Karen, you're never going to understand this, but I don't hate you. I simply need you out of the way. Mark can't grow with you constantly pulling at him. He listens to you too much. He trusts you too much. You make him think. You make him question me. You interfere. You weaken him. You see patterns I can't let you see. My hands shook harder. I forced myself to keep reading. I'm not trying to hurt him. I'm trying to fix him. And I can't fix him with you around. Once he's fully mine, once he's fully shaped, you won't matter anymore. People like you always fade eventually. The letter slipped from my fingers. My knees nearly gave out. Mark, she hates me. He shook his head quickly. No, Mom, this isn't hate. This is control. This is something else. Something dangerous. I backed away from the table, struggling to breathe. This wasn't insecurity. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't discomfort. This was engineered isolation, planned manipulation, calculated control. I whispered, Mark, this is psychotic. He nodded. And then he said something that chilled me deeper than anything I had seen in that basement. Mom, there's one more thing you need to know. I turned to him slowly. Emily didn't build this basement alone. My entire body went cold. What do you mean? He swallowed hard. There's someone else involved. Ooh. He hesitated, terrified, and finally whispered, someone she's been meeting secretly. Someone she trusts more than me. Someone who taught her everything she wrote down here. I stared at him, heart pounding. Who? Mark? WHO is helping her? He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, fear flashed through them. I think she has a mentor. When Mark said the word mentor, the basement suddenly felt colder. Not because of the chill in the air, but because the idea itself was terrifying. A mentor. Someone teaching Emily how to manipulate. Someone guiding her step by step. Mark, I whispered, my voice barely steady. Who is this mentor? How do you know? He rubbed the back of his neck like the truth physically hurt him. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to even consider it. But today, the evidence was right in front of me. He walked to the work table and picked up a binder. Black, thick, neatly labeled. Phase 3A, complete separation. I felt sick. Phase 3, I whispered. What were the other phases? He pointed to a stack of binders. Phase 1T, emotional distancing. Phase 2A, influence removal. Phase 3, isolation completion, each labeled like a business project. Cold, clinical, planned. This isn't normal? I said, my chest tightening. This is a system, a program. He nodded slowly. Exactly. And Emily didn't create it. I looked at him sharply. Then who did? Mark hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. Mark, I whispered, please, tell me. He finally took a breath and said the name, her therapist. My stomach dropped. What? He closed his eyes, pain flooding his face. Mom, Emily had a therapist before we met. A life coach, a behavioral specialist. At least that's what she called him. She stopped seeing him before the wedding, or so I thought. He pointed toward a stack of envelopes on the shelf. She never stopped. She was meeting him in secret, messaging him, getting instructions. I picked up the top envelope. Inside were notes written not in her handwriting, but in a man's. Do not let the mother-in-law gain influence. Keep emotional barriers strong. Control communication flow. Limit family interference. Move to phase 2 as soon as cracks appear. Cracks. He meant Mark. I whispered, horror blooming in my chest. This man was training her. Yes, Mark whispered. And she trusted him. More than me. More than anyone. My heart hammered. Why would a therapist do this? I whispered. Why would he encourage this? Mark's expression changed. A deep, terrified realization settling in. He wasn't just a therapist, Mom. He was something else. Emily once mentioned he had unusual methods, that he helped her rebuild after trauma, that he pushed clients to eliminate anything that caused emotional instability. And she thought I caused her instability. I whispered. Yes, he said, because he convinced her that anyone who questioned her decisions was a threat to her control. I felt my knees weaken. This wasn't just emotional abuse. This was indoctrination. A man teaching her how to break relationships. How long has this been going on? I asked. Years? Mark murmured. Even before me. I stared at the notes again. Bile rising in my throat. Identify emotional threats early. Remove access to external support systems. Shape partner's psychological dependence. I covered my mouth. This is monstrous, I whispered. Mark nodded, pacing back and forth. It gets worse. My stomach clenched. Worse how? I found something else, he said, walking toward the far corner of the basement. He picked up a locked metal box and placed it on the table. There was a dent in the lid, like someone had smashed it open recently. Emily kept this hidden behind the insulation, he said. I only found it because the insulation panel slipped. He opened the box slowly. Inside were printed text messages, emails, voice transcriptions, and one small flash drive, all labeled Mentor Direct Instructions. My blood ran cold. Mark, what did he tell her to do? He swallowed painfully. Everything, every step she took, every lie she told, every rule she made for me, every boundary she forced between us. He looked at me, eyes full of guilt. Mom, he told her to separate me from you. My heart cracked, and she listened. He whispered. She followed every instruction. I took a shaky breath. Mark, why didn't you see it earlier? His shoulders slumped because she was careful, subtle. And I thought she was just stressed. I thought I could fix it. But today I saw the truth. He pointed at the flash drive. That drive contains recordings. Recordings. I whispered. He nodded. Off their sessions. My breath caught. Did you listen? He hesitated. Yes. And his voice cracked. Mom, you need to hear it yourself. He plugged the flash drive into an old laptop sitting on the desk and opened the first audio file. A man's voice came through the speakers. Calm, smooth, cold. Emily, your mother-in-law is influencing Mark too deeply. Remove her access. Create tension. Make her uncomfortable. Eventually, Mark will adapt to your preferences. My stomach twisted violently. He continued, once she is outside the emotional circle, you can reshape Mark more efficiently. Reshape. Like he was molding my son like clay. Another clip played automatically. If she pushes back, escalate boundaries, frame her as unstable, intrusive, or manipulative, Mark will protect you if you cry or show hurt. I felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't marriage advice. This was psychological warfare. Another clip. Your husband must trust you more than anyone else. His mother is the biggest obstacle. Mark flinched. Another, remove her. Permanently. My blood froze. Remove her. The room spun. Oh, God, I whispered. Mark, she wanted me gone. Mom, he whispered, voice breaking. She was planning a total cutoff. And if I resisted, I wished we didn't answer. Then I whispered the question he was afraid to say. Mark, do you think she wanted to hurt me? He closed his eyes. I don't know. But she wasn't thinking for herself anymore. He was in her head. A terrifying realization hit me. Mark, I whispered, my voice trembling. Where is she now? He looked at me with panic in his eyes. I don't know. And where is he? Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. Then Mark whispered, that's what scares me, Mom. They were supposed to meet today. The floor felt like it dropped out from under me. Meet? Where? I don't know, he said, panic rising. She left in a hurry. She took her purse and her phone, and she kept saying she had to fix the mistake. What mistake? He swallowed. She said she let you see too much. My heart stopped. She's coming for me, I whispered. Mark grabbed my shoulders. No, she won't get near you. Not now that I know the truth. But Mom, we have to act fast. The basement suddenly felt like a crime scene, filled with evidence of a woman unraveling, controlled by a dangerous man. I whispered, barely able to speak, Mark, we're in danger. He nodded slowly. Both of us. Mark and I stood in that basement, the air thick with fear and dust and memories we didn't want. The whiteboard of photos felt like it was staring back at us. Proof of months of manipulation, lies, and slowly tightening control. I kept asking myself the same question. How do we not see this sooner? How did Emily hide something this big, this dark, right under our noses? Mark was pacing, running his fingers through his hair again and again, like he was trying to keep himself from falling apart. Mom, he said, his voice barely holding steady. We have to leave the house. Leave? I whispered. Why? He gestured around the room helplessly. Look at this. Look at all of this. She's been planning things behind my back. Behind your back. She's meeting some so-called mentor who tells her to cut people off. She's tracking our movements. She's studying us like a case study. And now she's gone. And she never just disappears. He grabbed my hands. We don't know what she's doing right now, or who she's with. I swallowed hard, the terror fully settling into my bones. What do you think she's planning? I don't know, Mark admitted. But I think she's scared and desperate. And desperate people do unpredictable things. We climbed the basement stairs quickly. My heart thudded in my chest, each step feeling heavier than the last. The moment we reached the kitchen, Mark locked the basement door behind us like he wanted to seal the evil away underground. As he turned the key, his hands shook so much I had to steady them again. Mark, breathe. He swallowed, nodding, but his eyes were unfocused, distant. Mom, she was never like this in the beginning. She was intense, yes, structured, private. But this, his voice cracked. This is something else entirely. I touched his face gently. She fooled you because she wanted to fool you. That's what manipulators do. He didn't argue. Instead, he whispered. She didn't want me to have anyone but her. I nodded slowly. She wanted control. And control requires isolation. He stared at me with hollow eyes. She almost succeeded. We moved to the living room. The blinds still closed. The shadows stretched across the walls like long fingers. Mark pulled out his phone and checked it again. No messages. No calls. Nothing from Emily. Should we call the police? I asked softly. He shook his head. And say what? That my wife built a psychological torture chamber in our basement. And she's following some twisted mentor. We need more proof. I gestured weakly toward the basement. Isn't Bohat we found enough? He hesitated. Maybe. But I don't want them to think she's dangerous without evidence. She's actually hurting someone. She needs help, therapy, intervention, something. But if the cops get involved too soon, his phone buzzed suddenly. We both jumped. Mark grabbed it immediately, his face draining of color. It's her, he whispered. I stepped closer. What did she say? He turned the screen toward me. A single text message. You weren't supposed to go down there. My blood ran ice cold. Another message came through instantly. You've ruined everything. Then a third. Meet me. Alone. Mark's breath shook. Mom, she knows. I whispered, she's watching. His eyes darted to the windows, the drawn blinds suddenly looking like flimsy paper shields. She's close, he said quietly. She's somewhere nearby. I could hear my own heartbeat racing in my ears. Mark, don't go, I said. We don't know what her state of mind is. He nodded but looked torn. If I don't meet her, she could do something reckless. She's not stable, Mom. I can't just ignore her. And you think meeting her alone is safer? I asked sharply. He clenched his jaw. I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. Another message buzzed. Come alone or don't come at all. I felt sick. This is a trap, I whispered. She's being coached. Someone is telling her exactly what to say. Mark stared at the message for a long, painful moment. I think you're right, he murmured. This isn't her. This is him. I grabbed his wrist. Mark, you are not going alone. His eyes lifted to mine, full of fear, guilt, and something else. Resolve. I don't want to drag you into this any deeper. You're my son, I said firmly. There is no too deep when it comes to you. But we need to be smart, not reckless. He swallowed hard. What should we do? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. We need someone who understands manipulation, who understands psychological abuse, someone who can help us navigate this safely. Mark frowned. Ooh, my voice trembled but stayed firm. Your father? Mark froze. My father? Mom? He's been out of the picture for years. I know. But he's not just your father. He's a former investigator. He knows how these people operate. Mark hesitated. He hasn't spoken to me in a decade. But he'll speak to me, I said quietly. Mom, are you sure? No, I admitted. But we don't have time to be unsure. I took out my phone, and for the first time in 12 years, I dialed his number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Hello. His voice, older, rougher, but unmistakable. David. Oh, it's Karen. Silence. Then, what's wrong? Not how are you, not why are you calling? Just, what's wrong? And just like that, I broke. David, it's about our son. He's in danger. And so am I. His voice sharpened instantly. Where are you? His house. I'm on my way. David, 20 minutes. Don't go anywhere. The line went dead. Mark stared at me, stunned. He's coming here. Yes. He ran a hand over his face. Mom, if he thought something was wrong just from your voice. I nodded slowly. Then it's worse than we thought. We stood in that silent living room waiting for David, waiting for answers, waiting for whatever would happen next. But underneath all the fear, all the tension, all the uncertainty one terrifying thought echoed through both our minds. Emily wasn't acting alone, and the man controlling her was coming too. The only thing louder than the silence inside the house was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Mark and I didn't speak, couldn't speak. Every breath felt stretched thin with fear. Every shadow felt too long. Every passing minute felt like something tightening around us. Emily was out there somewhere, unstable, panicked, guided by a man who treated human relationships like puzzles he could disassemble and rebuild. And that man knew about me. He knew about Mark. He knew we'd finally uncovered everything. We didn't know what he would do next. At exactly 19 minutes, not 20, headlights swept across the front windows. Mark stiffened. It's him. My heart raced as I moved toward the door. Before I could even reach the handle, the door unlocked from the outside. Only one person ever did that without knocking. David, he stepped inside quickly, shutting the door behind him with a heavy thud. He looked older, his hair more gray than I remembered, lines deeper around his eyes, but the presence was the same, strong, sharp, alert. He scanned the living room in seconds. Then his eyes landed on Mark. A flicker of something soft, guilt or longing or both, crossed his face. Mark, he said quietly. Mark nodded stiffly. Dead. Silence pulsed between them. 12 years of distance sitting between father and son. But this wasn't the moment for reunions. David looked at me. Tell me everything. I took a breath, trying to steady my voice as Mark, and I explained everything we saw in the basement. The photos, the notes, the systematic phases, the mentor, the secret messages, the recordings, Emily's disappearance, the threatening texts. David listened without interrupting, jaw tightening with every new detail. When Mark replayed the audio clip, remove her. Permanently. David's eyes darkened. That wasn't therapy, he said flatly. That was conditioning. Conditioning. Mark repeated, confused. David paced, old investigator habits kicking in. This man isn't a therapist. He's a behavioral manipulator, a coercive controller, someone who breaks down mental defenses and builds dependency. My chest tightened, like a cult leader. David nodded once. Exactly. These people don't need a building or a religion to run a cult. All they need is one vulnerable mind and access. Mark ran a hand through his hair. Emily didn't seem vulnerable. She seemed strong, David said, controlled, structured. Mark nodded. That's exactly the type they target. David explained. People who want control usually fear losing it. All he had to do was amplify that fear, and she became his perfect project. I felt cold all over. She wasn't just being possessive. I whispered. She was being groomed. David stopped pacing and faced me fully. She was being weaponized. My stomach dropped. Against us, against anyone who threatened her dependency on him. David clarified. That mentor, whoever he is, didn't want her having outside connections. You became the biggest threat. I swallowed hard. So he turned her against me. No, David said. He taught her to turn Mark against you. Mark closed his eyes. Pain etched deep on his face. And when that didn't work, David continued, escalated. We fell silent. David's gaze flicked to the windows. Haze nearby. I'd bet my life on it. Mark stiffened. Because he's not done with her? David said. And he's not letting two people slip out of his control without trying to regain it. I whispered, so Emily is with him. Maybe, David said. Maybe not. Either way, she's unstable right now. When people are caught between a manipulator's grip and their own guilt, they make unpredictable choices. My voice trembled. David, what do we do? He didn't hesitate. We prepare. And we don't split up. He moved to the windows and peeked outside carefully. No movement yet, he murmured. But the fact she texted Mark means she's close. And the fact she wants to meet alone means he's influencing her words. Mark swallowed. Should I answer the text? No, David snapped. Not until we know more. But if I don't respond, David cut him off sharply. Mark, if you respond wrong, you'll walk into a trap. That man doesn't think emotionally. He thinks strategically. And Emily? I whispered. David's face softened for a moment. She thinks emotionally, which makes her unpredictable and dangerous in a different way. My breath caught. Dangerous how? David took a breath before answering. She's afraid of losing Mark. She's afraid of losing the control she thinks she has. And afraid people will see the truth about her mental state. He met my eyes. And scared people with something to hide, sometimes lash out. I felt dizzy. David reached for his phone, pulled up a secure contacts list, and dialed someone. Who are you calling? I asked. Someone who owes me a favor. He spoke quickly, low enough that Mark couldn't hear every word. When he hung up, he turned to us. Help is coming, he said, but we need time. Mark frowned. Time for what? To figure out what Emily was planning next. We all froze. The house creaked. A branch brushed against the siding outside. My breath hitched. David raised a hand, signaling for silence. Then, a soft sound outside, near the porch. Footsteps, slow, unsteady. Too light to be a man. Too familiar to be a stranger. My heart stopped. David whispered, "She's here." We all swallowed hard. Mark moved toward the door instinctively, but David blocked him. "No," he said sharply. "Let me see first." He peeked through the peephole. His eyes narrowed. Then he stepped back slowly. "It's her." Mark's eyes widened. "Is she alone?" David hesitated. "No." My knees buckled. David whispered the words I feared most. "Has with her. And he's watching the house." For a moment, no one breathed. The weight of David's words pressed onto our chests like a physical force. "Has with her. He's watching the house." Mark tensed beside me, every muscle locked, his jaw tight enough to crack teeth. "Where exactly are they?" He whispered. David kept his voice low and steady, the voice he used to use when delivering bad news in cases he worked years ago. They're standing near the porch, off to the right. He's keeping low, using the wall for cover. She's standing still. "Still," I whispered. "Why?" David hesitated, and that alone made my stomach twist. She looks confused. Lost, like she doesn't know why she's here. A shiver ran through me. That meant the manipulator, the man behind everything, was still controlling the situation, while Emily was caught somewhere in the middle, trapped between him and her own unraveling mind. "What do we do?" Mark whispered. "Well, I can't just hide in here." David agreed. "We need to control this. If they think we're panicking, he'll escalate." He motioned for us to stay low as he slipped to the window again. I crouched beside the sofa, whispering, "David, can he see us?" "Not from the angle he's using," David murmured. "He's careful. Too careful. He's been planning this." Mark clenched his fists. "Then he knows we found the basement." David nodded. "He knows everything now." My throat tightened. "What does he want?" David's eyes didn't leave the window. Control, he said. Always control. And if he feels it slipping, he becomes dangerous. My heart pounded so loudly, I was sure they could hear it from outside. Then a soft knock, not loud, not angry, not rushed, just a gentle, almost polite knock at the door. Emily's knock. Mark stood up instantly, but David yanked him back down with surprising force. Joanne, Dad? She's my wife? And she's unstable. David snapped. And she's not alone. We all froze again as another knock sounded, slightly firmer. Emily's voice floated through the door, soft, shaky, broken. Mark, please, I need to talk to you. I felt my chest tighten painfully. Her voice wasn't the cold, controlled Emily I knew. It was trembling, fragile, frightened. Mark's eyes softened instantly. She's scared. Exactly, David hissed. Which is why you can't open the door. Another knock. Mark, please, I just want to explain. Mark whispered, something's wrong with her. I have to help. David turned to him sharply. If you open that door, she becomes unpredictable, and he becomes dangerous. Mark swallowed hard. Is he forcing her to say this? David's jaw tightened. He might be. Or he might be letting her walk right into the trap he built. Emily's voice cracked again, shaking with emotion. Mark, I'm sorry, please. It hurt to hear. It hurt because the pain in her voice was real. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't acting. She was breaking. But that didn't make the situation safer. David whispered, we need to separate HER from HAM. How? Mark whispered. Let Mimi talk to her first. Mark looked stunned. Yo, she doesn't even know you. That's exactly why she might listen, David said. I'm not part of her emotional battlefield. I'm neutral. Before any of us could respond, Emily knocked again. This time weaker. Please, I didn't know what he really was. I didn't know. Her voice broke completely now, collapsing under guilt and fear. And then a second voice, a man's voice, low, soft, careful, the kind of voice used to calm, manipulate, coax. Emily, he murmured from outside, don't cry. You're safe. You're doing the right thing. My blood turned to ice. Mark's face went white. That's him, he whispered. That's the mentor. David motioned for silence. Mark whispered, what do you think he wants? David responded quietly. To regain control, he peeked one more time through the window. He's holding her elbow, guiding her. He's not letting her walk away. My stomach churned. He's using her as bait. Yes, David said. And he wants Mark to open that door. Emily's crying grew louder. Mark, please, please come out. Mark's breath broke. She sounds terrified. David placed a firm hand on his shoulder. That's the point. He's using her distress to pull you out. But if we don't help her, we will help her, David said, but not by walking into his hands. The knocking stopped. The porch creaked. Then the man's voice again, calm, too calm. Emily, knock properly. He can't hear you like that. A sharp intake of breath from her. Then, THRI hard, KNO-CKS, controlled, precise. Not her knock, his. David stood immediately. That's not good. What does that mean? I whispered. David turned to us with urgency. It means he's taking over now. Mark whispered. What do we do? Call the police. Police won't get here fast enough, David said. We need to buy time. How? David took a deep breath. I'm going to talk to him. My heart nearly stopped. David? No? He held up a hand. I'm not opening the door. I'm just making sure he knows he's not the only one who understands mind games. David stepped closer to the door, his voice calm, firm, controlled. A milli-step away from the door. Silence. Then the man spoke, smooth, mocking, confident. And who are you supposed to be? David smirked. Something dark and sharp. Someone who sees through you? A pause. Then the man chuckled softly. I doubt that. David's jaw tightened. Let her go. Another laugh. Why would I do that? She came here because she needed guidance. Because she made a mistake. David's voice grew colder. You manipulated a mentally fragile woman into isolating her husband and his mother. A pause. Then, that's a very strong accusation, the man said. You don't even know me. David replied with a quiet, deadly calm. Oh, I know exactly what men like you do. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Outside, the porch creaked again. Then the man spoke, voice still smooth but sharper now. If you don't open this door, I'll make her. A gasp escaped Emily. Mark lunged forward. EMLI. David held him back with surprising strength. No, David hissed. Not yet. My whole body shook as the man outside said softly, Emily, tell him to open the door. She stammered. Say it, he whispered. Mark, please, open the door. Mark's breath shattered. Dade. He's hurting her, David whispered. If we open that door, he'll hurt Wayu. Mark froze, torn, fractured, desperate. And David added quietly, and once he gets you, she's gone forever. Just then, a loud sound outside, a sudden thud, a muffled cry, then silence. David's eyes widened. He's escalating. He's losing control. I grabbed Mark's hand. What does that mean? David swallowed hard, then whispered the words that made every bone in my body go cold. It means he's about to do something very, very dangerous. The silence outside the house was worse than the knocking, worse than the crying, worse than the threats. It was the kind of silence that comes right before something snaps. David moved back from the door slowly, every step measured, calculated. His eyes were fixed, unblinking, as if he were reading invisible danger signals in the air. Mark whispered, voice trembling. What was that noise? Did he hurt her? David didn't answer immediately. That alone terrified me. Then he said quietly, he's losing control of her. And when manipulators lose control, they lash out. I pressed my hand over my mouth. We can't just sit here. She's outside. She's terrified. She isn't alone, David said. And if we run out now, we walk right into his hands. Mark's breathing grew fast and uneven. I can't let him hurt her. I can't. David grabbed his arm, pulling him close enough to force eye contact. Listen to me, he whispered sharply. If you go out there now, he will control YOU2. He will use you. He will escalate, and then neither of you comes back inside. Mark flinched as if struck. Outside, a soft, dragging sound echoed across the porch. A shuffle, a slow movement. I felt my heart drop to my feet. What is he doing? I whispered. David leaned in closer to the window, not enough to be seen, but enough to listen. He's repositioning her, maybe trying to force her to knock again. His voice lowered further, or he's deciding his next move. Mark's fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. I swear, if he lays a hand on her. Mark? David snapped softly. Your anger is what he wanted, Tess. You need to stay in control. Suddenly, a sharp bang on the door, but not a knock, more like someone being shoved against it. Emily's voice broke through in a frantic cry. Mark, don't open it. Then a muffled grunt, like someone's hand was shoved over her mouth. I felt my knees weaken. Mark lurched forward, but David pinned him back again, shaking his head violently. "I wants you enraged," David hissed. "He wants you emotional. He wants you to lose your logic." His voice grew colder. "That's how men like him win." Another bang shook the door. My breath hitched. "David, this can't continue. He's hurting her. We need the police." "I already called them," David said. "They're 7 minutes out. 7 minutes." It felt like 7 lifetimes. "What if we don't have 7 minutes?" I whispered. David's eyes flicked toward me. "That's exactly why we need to survive those 7 minutes." Outside, the man's voice shifted, no longer calm, no longer smooth. It was harsher now, frustrated, cracking. "Emily," he hissed. "Do as I said. You brought us here. You said he would listen. Don't fail me." His voice had lost its control. That was dangerous. A man like him unravels like a bomb. Emily whimpered. A soft, broken sound. "Please, please stop. U.S. EFL, people don't cry." He snarled. "Knock." Again. My stomach turned to ice. He wasn't just manipulative. He was violent. He was escalating. He was losing grip on her mind and on reality. Another forced bang against the door. This time, it sounded like her shoulder hitting the wood. "Oh, God," I whispered. "Oh, God," Mark's voice cracked. "He's using her as a weapon." "Yes," David whispered. "And a shield." We were trapped in a nightmare. Suddenly, the footsteps outside shifted, heavy, urgent. A crack in the wood, a strained breath, a rustle of clothing. "He's trying to find another way in," David whispered urgently. Mark's head whipped to the windows. "Which side?" David motioned toward the kitchen. "Back entrance." "He's testing vulnerabilities." David moved swiftly, silently, motioning us to stay behind him. He checked the back door, locked. He checked the windows, secured. Then, a noise. A faint metallic scraping coming from the side of the house. David's eyes sharpened immediately. He's trying to remove a screen. Mark looked sick. Why would he? To get inside? David said. He knows we won't open the front door. He's trying to flank us. I can't get in. I whispered desperately. David looked at me with a gaze that froze my blood. He can, if he's determined enough. We hurried back to the front room. Emily was silent now, too silent. Mark's breath hitched. Data, why isn't she making noise? David didn't answer. He moved toward the window slowly, peered out just enough to see. His face changed instantly. What? Mark whispered urgently. What is it? David backed away from the window, voice dropping into a controlled, urgent whisper. He moved her? Moved her where? I asked, panic rising. He dragged her off the porch. My body went cold, dragged. David nodded once, grimly. He pulled her down the side of the house. She's either unconscious or too terrified to resist. Mark choked out a sound between a sob and a curse. I swear to God, I'll kill him. David grabbed his arm again. No, you won't, because you're going to stay alive for her. Outside, the faint metallic scraping grew louder. He wasn't trying to get in anymore. He was trying to break in. David turned to us, voice low but fiercely controlled. This is the breaking point. What do you mean? I whispered. He inhaled deeply. He only has two choices now, flee or force entry. And which is he choosing? Mark whispered. David's eyes flicked toward the window. The scraping stopped. Silence. Thin. A shadow passed by the front of the window. Slow. Careful. Calculated. David whispered. He's circling back. My chest tightened painfully. For what? David's voice dropped to a chilling whisper. For one final attempt to get inside. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Every light was off. Every curtain drawn. Every heartbeat trembling in the dark. Mark clung to the edge of the wall, staring at the front door like it was a live bomb. I felt my pulse thundering inside my ears, each throb louder than the last. David didn't blink once. His focus laser, sharp, his jaw clenched. Outside, silence. But it wasn't peaceful silence. It was the kind that comes right before something explodes. David whispered, "He's circling the house again, looking for weak spots." Mark's voice was raw. "She's out there with him, Dad." He dragged her. David tightened his grip on Mark's shoulder. "I know. And that's exactly why you're not going out there." Mark was shaking with anger and fear. "If he hurts her, if you go out there," David cut him off, "he'll use her as leverage, or worse. He's not thinking straight. This is an unstable man with a collapsing plan. That is the most dangerous kind of man." A faint thud echoed from outside. Slow, measured, intentional. I clutched the arm of the couch so tightly my fingers ached. "What was that?" I whispered. David didn't move. "He's testing the side entrance. He's checking structural weaknesses." I couldn't breathe. "Can he get in?" "He's trying." Another thud. Louder this time. Mark flinched. "He's going to break the door." David shook his head. "Not yet. He's building courage. Men like him need ritual. They psych themselves up." Suddenly, a loud smash on the kitchen window. I screamed before I could stop myself. Mark lunged forward, but David blocked him with both arms.
STO!
The smashing sound came again, glass rattling in its frame. "He's hitting the window," David said, testing how reinforced it is. Mark's voice cracked. "Dad, he's trying to get in?" "Yes," David said sharply. "And as long as we stay calm, we control the next move." I pressed my hand over my mouth, terrified. What if the police don't come in time? "They will," David said, but for the first time, his voice wavered, just barely. Another smash. Harder, angrier. Then a voice, not Emily's, not kind, not soft, low, raspy. "Unhinged, Marquet, I froze." He was calling for him. "Calm? Oh," Mark's face turned pale. "I swear if he touches her." "He wants you enraged?" David snapped. "He wants you reckless." We all listened as the man's voice slithered through the dark. "You took everything from her, from me, and now you're going to fix it." David whispered, "He thinks the basement secret destroyed her marriage. That you exposed him. That why I owe him something." "But what does he want?" I asked. David didn't blink. Control. His hold over her is slipping. He blames Mark. So he's trying to lure him out. A desperate cry echoed faintly outside. Emily. My heart shattered. "Mark, don't. Come." Her plea was cut off by a sharp grunt, like someone covered her mouth again. Mark broke. "I'm going out there." "No, you're not." David grabbed him again, eyes fierce. "He will kill you. I can't just let her." "You're not," David hissed. "But you halpy her by staying alive." The house creaked, something heavy brushing against the siding. David's eyes widened slightly. He's at the porch again. Footsteps scraped across the wood. Then, the front doorknob rattled. I gasped. David raised a finger, warning us not to make a sound. The rattling grew more violent, metal shaking, wood stressing, then his voice again, closer, too close. Open, the door. I felt nauseous. Suddenly, a violent pound shook the whole frame. Teed. David's voice dropped to a whisper. "He's trying to break it." "Teach you, D." to D, each hit more unhinged. His using his shoulder, David murmured. Tetch, his winding himself up. What does that mean? Mark whispered, voice panicked. It means, David said grimly, he's about to commit. The next impact was so loud I screamed. The frame cracked, a long splintering sound. Mark's voice broke. He's getting in. He's almost inside. David agreed, which means we only have seconds. Seconds? My mind spun. What do we do? David inhaled sharply. We moved to the back hallway, away from entry points. Create a choke point? A choke point? I repeated. Yes, one entry path. He can't come from behind. It limits his advantage. Another slam shook the door. The top hinge buckled. We need to go, no, David said. We rushed toward the hallway. David stayed near the front, not too close, but enough to monitor the door. Mark grabbed my hand. Mom, stay behind me. I could barely walk. My legs were jelly, my vision blurry with fear. Then, a crackling sound, not wood, not glass. Police sirens, distant but approaching fast. Mark exhaled in relief. They're coming. But David's face didn't relax. No, he whispered. What do you mean, no? I cried. His eyes stayed locked on the door. This is the moment he becomes the most desperate. He hears those sirens. He hears those sirens. He knows his time is up. Mark's face twisted in horror. So what does he do? David whispered. He forces his way in. NW on QHE ram ed teach e dram ed so it has valuable odiwood eijht. The entire frame cracked open. The bottom hinge tore off. Light burst through the splintered gap, and I saw him. Just a glimpse. Wild eyes, sweat-soaked hair, hands gripping Emily's arm like a vice. His face twisted into something inhuman, and he screamed, Getoutir, no! Before the door swung wide, police tires screeched outside, but he didn't run. He didn't hide. He snarled, dragging Emily toward the broken doorway, and David finally shouted, D.O. Bubban! For a heartbeat, the world froze. Sirens wailed outside, bright blue, and red lights flashing across the living room, walls like lightning. The broken front door hung crooked, one hinge barely attached. Splinters scattered across the floor. And standing right in that shattered doorway was the man. Wild. Sweating. Breathing like an animal backed into a corner. His fingers locked around Emily's arm, so tight her skin was turning white. Her eyes, God, her eyes, they weren't angry anymore. They weren't cold. They were swollen with terror and pain. She looked like someone who had finally realized she wasn't just manipulated. She was trapped. The old movie. The man roared, yanking her in front of him like a shield. Emily gasped in pain, her knees buckling, but he jerked her upright again, lips curling into something that didn't even resemble sanity anymore. The police shouted from the yard, Oh, die LPV white tying gas TP off RMTHE house. But he didn't back down. If anything, he pulled her closer. David stepped forward slightly, hands raised in a calming motion, slow, controlled, deliberate. Listen, he said in a low, grounding tone. The police are here. There's nowhere to go. You don't want to make this worse. The man's head snapped toward David, eyes blazing with hatred. You think you can tell me what to do? He snarled. You think you understand me? I do, David said calmly, because I've dealt with men like you. A growl escaped the man's throat. No, you haven't. You don't know what she did. She betrayed me. Emily whimpered. I didn't betray you. He barked, shaking her so violently she nearly fell. Mark surged forward at the sight, fury ripping through him. GT Yayur. Hands off my wife! The man instantly shifted, dragging Emily even closer, pressing himself behind her like he was ready to use her body as armor. David blocked Mark again. Fiercely. Mark, Estiope, he hissed. He's unstable. If you rush him, he'll snap. He's hurting her, Mark shouted, tears streaming down his face. And if you step forward, David said urgently, he'll hurt her worse. Another officer shouted from outside. The man screamed. Sechis natia hustigis is mini. No, she's not, David said. She's not anyone's possession. She's sick. She needs help. And you're making everything worse. The man let out a laugh, high-pitched and hollow, a laugh that didn't sound human. You don't understand, he muttered. You don't know what she told me. You don't know what she promised. He yanked Emily's hair, forcing her head back. She said she needed Minnie. She said I was the only one who could save her. Emily sobbed. I didn't mean it. I was scared. Please, just stop. He pressed his forehead against the back of her head, breathing heavily. They took you from me, he whispered. They turned you against me? They stole you? Mark shouted, She's my wife! She wasn't yours to begin with. The man's head jerked up, deranged fury filling his eyes. David moved slowly, stepping closer by inches, his voice steady, soothing. Let her go, he said gently. This doesn't end the way you think it does. The police are here. They're armed. You can't fight them? The man shook his head violently. No. I'm not going back. I'm not losing again. His grip tightened on Emily. I'm not. David held his gaze. You don't want to hurt her. Yes, the man hissed. Idio. Emily screamed. Mark lunged forward, but David shoved him back, harder than before. And in that split second, the man made his move. He dragged Emily backward out the broken doorway, straight toward the yard, straight toward the shouting officers, straight toward danger. Aunt Mae! Mark screamed. Everything turned into chaos. Police rushed forward. Flashlights blinded us. Commands were shouted. Metal scraped. Boots hit gravel. Emily cried out in terror. But the man didn't stop. He kept dragging her, using her as a shield, backing away, nay, toward the shadows, like a predator retreating with prey. David shouted, Don't. Soot!
You signed your ass, Koval!
The officers adjusted their positions instantly. Emily slipped, her knees buckling, and the man jerked her upward with a snarl, fury twisting his face. Why promise di me? He screamed at her. Why budi alaivi him? I was sick, Emily cried. I wasn't thinking. I didn't mean it, please. Just let me go. The man's face flickered. For a moment, just a tiny moment, emotion broke through the rage. Abandonment, hurt, fear. And David seized that moment like a trained negotiator. She's not leaving you, he said gently. She's getting help. That's what she needs. Not punishment, not control. I can help her. The man cried desperately. I can fix her. I can fix everything. You can't fix someone, David said softly, by breaking them. Those words hit something deep inside the man, deep enough to make him freeze. His fingers loosened on Emily's arm, just slightly. And that was all the opening the officers needed. One officer lunged from the left. Another rushed from the right. A third grabbed the man's wrist. Emily stumbled forward, falling into Mark's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. The man thrashed, screamed, cursed, fought. No! You can't attack here! Lio can't eat. Ha from me, It took 4 officers to hold him down. 4. He kicked. He clawed. He spat. He slammed his head against the gravel. Even as they cuffed him, he kept screaming her name.
Emily!
Emily. But she didn't turn around. She buried her face in Mark's chest, trembling violently. I felt tears flood my eyes as the officers dragged the man away, still screaming, still fighting, still lost in madness. And when he was finally shoved into the back of the police car, when the door slammed shut, when the screaming turned into muffled echoes, Emily collapsed to her knees. Her voice cracked into a whisper that shattered all of us. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what he really was. I didn't know. Mark fell beside her, holding her tightly. And David, for the first time that night, closed his eyes and let out a shaking breath. It was over. Not the healing, not the consequences, but the danger. Finally, the danger was over. The police car carrying the man disappeared down the street, its sirens fading into the night like a storm, finally rolling away. Yet even when the noise was gone, the silence left behind was trembling, almost fragile, like the house itself was trying to understand what had just happened. Emily sat on the curb outside our home, wrapped in a blanket an officer had given her. Her hands shook uncontrollably, her eyes glassy, unfocused. Mark stayed by her side, one arm around her shoulders, gently rubbing warmth back into her skin. She looked so small now, so breakable, so different from the daughter-in-law who once glared at me across dinner tables and shut doors in my face. David stood near the porch, giving instructions to the officers still lingering around the yard. His voice was low and steady, but his shoulders held exhaustion, the kind that only comes from decades of carrying burdens alone. I approached slowly, unsure of whether Emily wanted me close or whether she should have space. But when I stepped near her, she lifted her eyes to meet mine. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't look at me with coldness. She looked at me with shame, regret, and something deeply human, fear. Margaret, she whispered, voice cracking. I'm so sorry for everything I did. You didn't deserve any of it. I was drowning, and I dragged all of you under with me. I knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand over hers. You were hurt. You were manipulated. And you were lost. That doesn't make you a monster. Her lips trembled, but I acted like one. Yes, I said softly. But tonight you face the truth. You chose to run from him. You chose your family. That matters more than you think. Tears slid down her cheeks. I thought he understood me. I thought he could save me from myself. I didn't know he was making everything worse. David stepped closer. That's what manipulators do. They break the weakest part of you and convince you they're the only ones who can put it back together. Emily nodded slowly. I let him convince me you were my enemy. I let him convince me that the only way to protect myself was to push you away. She inhaled shakily. But the truth is, you were the one person I should have trusted. I squeezed her hand gently. Then trust me now. She leaned her head on Mark's shoulder, crying softly. He kissed her hair, whispering, We'll get through this, Em. All of us. An officer approached then. Sir, ma'am, we'll need statements tomorrow. For tonight, she needs rest and maybe medical attention. Emily nodded. Yes, I'll go. But before the officers stepped away, one of them turned to David. Your instincts saved them. Saved all of them. David just gave a tired nod. I didn't save them. They saved themselves by sticking together. The night air felt cold as we all slowly walked back into the house. The broken door hung loosely. the porch littered with splinters. The home that had once felt warm and welcoming now felt scarred, like it had survived the night with us. Inside, Emily's gaze drifted to the hallway where the basement door stood. Closed. Silent. Harmless now. She whispered, that basement was like a grave I kept trying to bury myself in. Mark wrapped an arm around her again. You're out now. That chapter is over. Emily looked up at him. And I want help, real help, therapy, treatment, anything I need. I don't ever want to fall back into that darkness again. David nodded approvingly. That's the first step. We spent the rest of the night cleaning up what we could. Mark replaced the door temporarily with wooden boards. Emily sat with a cup of tea, staring into nothing, processing everything. David made sure all windows were locked, all lights working, all entry points secured. I watched my son hold his wife's hand, gently, protectively, his eyes soft with love. Despite everything she had done, he didn't walk away. He didn't blame her. He didn't abandon her. And in that moment, I understood something profound. Love isn't perfect. Love isn't easy. Love is choosing someone even when it hurts. When the house finally quieted, Emily approached me again. Margaret, she whispered, voice trembling. May I ask you something? Of course. Of course. Why did you still fight for me, even after everything I put you through? I smiled softly. Because I wasn't fighting against you. I was fighting for the family we all deserved. And because Liam needs you. A healthy you. Her eyes welled again. And you. Do you still want to be in our lives? I took her hands firmly. I never wanted anything else. She broke down then, falling into my arms, crying like someone finally letting go of years of pain. And I held her, not as a mother-in-law, not as a victim of her cruelty, but as someone who believed in healing, in forgiveness, in second chances. Weeks passed. Emily began therapy. The restraining order against the man remained in full force. Police built a strong case against him. Kidnapping, harassment, attempted forced entry. And slowly, carefully, beautifully, our family healed. One afternoon, I arrived at their home for dinner. Emily met me at the door, smiling, steady, warm. Come in, Mom, she said. Mom, not Margaret. Not her, Mom. Inside, Liam ran toward me, giggling, Grandma, Grandma, come play. As I scooped him into my arms, Emily watched with a soft expression. I'm glad you're here, she said. I'm glad you never gave up on us. I brushed a tear from her cheek. Families don't give up. And as I watched Mark hug his wife, watched their home glow with the warmth of healing, I knew one thing. The secret in their basement didn't destroy us. It saved us because it led to truth. Truth led to protection. Protection led to healing. And healing led us back to each other.